the scholars from so many different places. So there are people from Chile, from Portugal, from Israel, from Germany, from India, from Belgium, from France, Slovenia, Brazil, United States, United Kingdom, and Czech Republic, and many, many of them from Spain. So welcome all. It's a pleasure to have you all here, and welcome, Dr. Krashen. We are very pleased to have you here today as here in our, I virtually invite you I'm inviting you to University of Huelva, to COIDESO. COIDESO is the name of our research center, and it stands for Contemporary Thinking and Innovation for Social Development. And here in this research center, where we have more than 70 different projects and more than over 100 researchers, all from that work from the fields of humanities or social sciences. And what do we do in this research center? So we are mainly interested in research of societal challenges. We analyze different relevant aspects related to inclusive societies, for innovation, and in societies that need to be reflexive, societies that still need much needed transformation. And we do it from economic, social, linguistic, and cultural perspective. And what is our main point? We want to empower people. We want to empower people through our research, because what we really want is, in the end, to find more well-being for everyone. And that is the reason what one of the topics we've been dealing with our project Music Lang. Our research group is also an international one, and it stands for, its name is Real Research for Affective Language Learning, because we really believe that there are issues in language acquisition, language learning, that have to do with affect, that have to do with identity, that have to do with musical aspects, but also obviously with intercultural one, and very obviously with reading. So we do not only think about learning to read, but also about reading to learn. And that is the reason why it is so important to have you today all already here with us. So very special thanks to your Professor Krashen. And I hand over to Dr. José Manuel Foncubierta the floor. He has been the one who has contacted you. He's the main organizer of this webinar, and he's the one who will introduce you. So thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Well, just one quick thing for you to know about. So the first part will be Dr. Krashen delivering his lecture, and then we can organize a debate. To organize the debate, at the bottom of your screen, you can find there are a button where you can click on it, and it says questions and answers. Preguntas y respuestas, okay? So you click on it, you can write your questions and we can see them, or also you can write them in the chat, and we will be trying. Annalise Foncubierta, which is also a member of this group, will also help us to organize this debate. So it's a real honor, and I give the floor to Dr. José Manuel Foncubierta so that we can introduce the topic and Dr. Krashen. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. Introducing Professor Krashen is very easy. Among papers and books, Dr. Krashen has more than 400 publications contributing to the fields of second language acquisition, bilingual education, and reading. He is currently one of the most influential linguists in the field of second languages. Stephen Krashen is Emeritus Professor at the University of Southern California. He is known for introducing various hypotheses related to second language acquisition. Most recently, Krashen promotes the use of free voluntary reading during second language acquisition and says, free voluntary reading is the most powerful tool we have in language education, first and second. His talk, entitled The Case for Fiction, focuses on this, on the relevant effect of fictional text on the process of acquiring a second language. Without further delay, Professor Krashen, thank you once again for accepting the invitation and opening with your talk the cycles of international seminars of our research group. Thank you very much. We are ready to enjoy with your seminar. Go ahead.
Well, I have a criticism of the introduction. Okay. I didn't like, no. You said over 400. It's now 555. I got another one last night. And the reason there are so many is that I'm very old. I've been doing this for 50 years. That's 10 a year. That's nothing. Okay. And I'll tell you some more of the secrets a little later. Anyway, it's been a work of pleasure, let me tell you. And there are going to be 500 more, I hope. If I keep drinking coffee, I'll be able to make it. Secreto la éxito. Okay, my friends from Israel, now, I'd like to begin by telling you what I have been doing during the pandemic. And this is the introduction to my talk. I've been having a very good time at home. I've been in what's called quarantine, and I want to stay there. I really don't want to go outside again. It's been wonderful. I'm here home alone with my novia, with my girlfriend, and we've only been married for 55 years. So it's still fresh and exciting. This is wonderful. I've been playing the piano. Actually, I've been practicing the piano, not just playing. That's something new for me. I've been exercising, you can see, right, every day. And I've been doing other things. I've been working on my languages. And let me tell you what that's like. I think for people like me and you, teachers and researchers, it's a very good idea to always try to improve your languages. You like doing that anyway. This is part of your love, your profession, your path, your calling. So I've been working on my languages, and I've been working on Spanish. Not working, I've been having a good time. Let me tell you how it got started. In the local, every Friday morning during the quarantine, I've been going to the local supermarket and I've been shopping. Because on Friday morning, early, it's for old people only, and that makes it much easier. And I found the first time I went there, about a year ago now, I got all my stuff to buy. I brought it to the counter and there was the man checking it out, okay? And I looked at his name and his name was Fidel. And I had heard him speak Spanish. Aha. So I said to him something in Spanish. He answered in English. They do that to be polite, okay? And I was ready. I said, Fidel, tú puedes ayudarme, okay? Mi meta es hablar español como ustedes. I want to learn to speak Spanish the way you do, okay? Hablamos español, por favor. He loved it because he's now on my team. This is great. Fidel and I are now very good friends, let me tell you. So every Friday, we talk for about 30 seconds, a minute, chit chat, jokes. We've started not just to talk, but really charlar, gossip about other people, say nasty things. It's a lot of fun. I'm getting better, and I can tell I'm getting better. By the way, Spanish is not my best language. It's like number 5. It's good to have a language where you're kind of in the middle. Then you can identify with students and other speakers. My really good languages, I'm beyond that, so I don't learn very much from it about language acquisition. But Spanish is just perfect for me. I have some problems here and there. I've noticed as the months went on, Fidel was talking more quickly. He was using more complex language. He was telling little jokes because he could tell I was getting better. And I called a friend of mine, Viviana, lives in Texas. She's Mexican-American. And the last time I spoke with her, I started speaking Spanish. She said, Steve, you're so much better. What are you doing? I'm getting better, but it's not because of the conversations with Fidel. Important. It's because of what I'm doing at home. At home, I'm reading. I am using a technique introduced by Benico Mason. I'll tell you about it later. I've been reading graded readers, books written for students. This is one of my favorite authors, Adriana Ramirez, where these books for students, they're easier, of course, and they're slowly becoming literature. They're slowly becoming interesting. They give you insights. You learn things. My other favorite author, some of you may have heard of him, Bill Van Patten. Bill Van Patten is a researcher in second language acquisition. He's very good. I think he's very good because he and I agree. That's my criteria for being very good. Okay. He says nice things about me. So Bill is fine. Anyway, Bill Van Patten, this tells you what's in these books. He writes in English and he writes in Spanish. He grew up with Spanish in Texas. Now, Bill is a very interesting guy. He's a really nice guy. He's very open. He's very free in talking about himself. Bill is homosexual. He is gay. And he talks about it, okay? Everybody knows. And his best friend is his sister. He's just retired and he's moved to California to be close to his sister. That's Bill Van Patten. Great story about Bill. He and I were at a conference. We were at ACTFL, the big foreign language conference. And Bill set it up so we could do a joint keynote together. We were on the stage together, going back and forth, discussion, question and answer. Suddenly the lights went out and suddenly they came on again, very, very bright. And Bill goes like this. He says, oh gosh, this is like waking up in a gay bar. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and you see who you're with. And he looked at me and says, I'm with you? Oh no. I was laughing for the rest of the time. I couldn't be serious. Bill Van Patten has been a comedian, stand-up comedian in nightclubs. So he's great at ad-libbing. The story is about Bill. He wrote a wonderful book, one of my favorites. It's about a young man and his sister, really Bill and his sister. The young man is gay and he doesn't know how to tell his parents. The sister takes over and does it for him and does a beautiful job. That's what these books are about now. They are literature. They are interesting. I have a hard time with real Spanish, authentic Spanish. I discovered Isabella Allende last year. Wow. I read one book by her. I read Zorro. I thought it was wonderful. It was too hard, but the story was so good. I kept reading because I wanted to know what's happening next. This is what is happening. I'll tell you more about this when I talk about pedagogy. These readers are good. I'm getting better in Spanish, not from talking to Fidel, but from going home and reading these books. So if you teach anything as a second language, Spanish, English, this is the key, I think. And I'll tell you more about it. Well, I want to talk a little bit about how wonderful stories are. I've gotten very interested in fiction. This is my topic today. I now have the hypothesis that the best thing we can do in teaching languages is introduce students to self-selection of popular and easy fiction, usually bestsellers. Here's how I discovered how wonderful fiction can be. I live about 50 kilometers from Los Angeles, from Santa Monica. There's a big road connects my village and Santa Monica called Pacific Coast Highway. And I went there twice a week for years and years. So I drove on Pacific Coast Highway twice a week. Two things were bringing me to Pacific Coast Highway. Number one, Gold's Gym, you can tell, as I said, okay, where I could work out, and Arnold Schwarzenegger worked out there. It was really exciting. The other thing was my nietos. My nietos live in Santa Monica, my grandchildren, and I'm still addicted to my nietos. My nieto right now is with us tonight. It's phenomenal. So some of you know how that is. Anyway, so I had to drive to go to Santa Monica, and it's boring. I hate driving. It's so dull. I didn't listen to music because here's what they've done now. Everything is money. You've noticed this. If you want good music, you have to pay for it. The regular stations it's terrible music that's the most boring I've ever heard, station after station. And the news programs are all still Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump, the conservative extreme right wing. And I can't take it anymore, okay? So I'm not listening to the radio. So I started going to the local libraries. This was easy. My daughter was a librarian in the Santa Monica Library. So I would go to those libraries, say hi to my daughter, and I would take out fiction, books on CD, books on tape, download books. The libraries only had books that are popular fiction, bestsellers, nothing in other languages, nothing in classical fiction. And I should read classical fiction because I'm a college professor. No, I started listening to the bestsellers. I listened to legal novels, John Grisham. I listened to medical novels, okay? I listened to macho novels, you know, cars crashing and men getting into fights and all the things I like best, okay? Historical novels, romance. Guess what? They're good. They're really good. The popular writers, the bestsellers, fiction, for the most part, not everyone, but for the most part, they're very, very good. I still listen to them. I started, of course, with Harry Potter, which had just come out. I got a great recording. Harry Potter is excellent. Harry Potter is all about education because it's about Hogwarts and what goes on in classes and the relationship between Harry Potter and Hermione and Ron. They're brilliant, absolutely brilliant books. These books are so good. I'll tell you what happens to me, and I'm sure this happens to you. You're driving, you're listening to some novel, detective story. You come home, you park your car, you stay in the car because you want to hear the end of the chapter. Isn't that right? I am amazed and thrilled at how good these authors are. I've been doing grown-up literature. I'm now beginning to find more young adult literature like Harry Potter. And I've also find when I go to conferences, and I've gone to lots of conferences on children's literature, the best speakers are the authors of children's books. They're clever, they're wonderful, they're insightful. So I am convinced. It has also helped my social life, reading fiction. Here is my strategy for surviving at parties. Not so much anymore, but lately, because we don't go out very much, which is fine. You go to a party and you know you're not going to know anybody. They're all strangers, okay? It's a friend of a friend of a friend. So you go to the party. I've started preparing for it. I find the 3 biggest bestsellers. I listen to them in the car. Then I go to the party. There's a group of people I don't know. I can come up to them and I said, I just read or I just saw Terminator 27. They'll start a conversation with you. They say, oh yeah, good movie. Oh no, I didn't like it. And you'll have a discussion worthy of a literature class. People understand fiction, they understand novels, they understand the stories. Everybody likes stories. That's what I have discovered. And my idea is we need to pay attention to it. I'm going to do about 5 minutes of theory, 5 minutes to discuss the last 50 years of research. That should be okay, because I assume some of you are familiar with it. The research comes to one dramatic conclusion. We acquire language in one way, when we understand it, when we understand what people tell us, and when we understand what we read. That's it. If I start talking to you in another language and you understand what I'm saying, you're acquiring the language. I'll give you a quick example. I'm going to give you 2 lessons in a language some of you speak, maybe 5% of you, some of you may have studied. I'll give you 2 lessons. You can tell me which one you like better. Okay? Das ist mein Kopf. Kopf. Verstehen Sie das? Kopf, ja, gut. Hier sind meine Ohren. Ohren. Ich habe 2 Ohren. 1, 2. Hier sind meine Augen. Augen. Ich habe 2 Augen. 1, 2 und hier sind meine Brillen, ja. Meine Brillen, ja. Ah, die sind schon da, gut. Und hier sind meine Zigaretten. Meine Zigaretten. Ach, wo sind meine Zigaretten? Ich habe keine Zigaretten. Zigaretten sind nicht gut. If you understood that, you did a little German, okay? Not every word. The second lesson, you'll see, is not quite as good. Here's the second lesson. Wir werden jetzt anfangen, Deutsch zu lernen. Und ich möchte im Voraus sagen, dass nach meiner Meinung Deutsch ist eine sehr schöne Sprache. Und ich hoffe, dass Sie alle sehr viel Erfolg mit Deutsch haben werden. Doesn't do you any good at all. If I kept talking to you like that, you would not pick up very much German, hardly any at all. The first one worked. If you understood the first one, not every word, but more or less, I did everything necessary to teach you German. Let me tell you some amazing things about language acquisition. Number 1, you don't have to understand every word. You just have to get the idea, okay? Number 2, no work, no suffering. You didn't have to try hard. All you had to do was listen to me make a few silly jokes, tell a little story. And it's involuntary. You have no choice. If you understood a little of Das ist mein Kopf, you acquired some German. You can't stop it. I'm letting that sink in. You can't stop it. Like it or not, you just acquired some German. I think the language acquisition device never shuts off. Noam Chomsky says the language acquisition device is a mental organ. It's like the visual system, like the kidneys, like the liver. You can't stop your kidneys by thinking about it. They always work the same with language acquisition. Now, our methods, we've divided into 2 segments, and here I'm acting as the representative of Benico Mason. Stage 1 is stories. Teachers tell stories. That's it. That's what you do for the first semester, second semester, third semester. That's all there is. If you like, you can have a little grammatical explanation, a little bit of linguistics for fun. Not necessary. The core of the method is stories. Benico Mason, Dr. Mason, prepares the story, looks at the story, sees which words might be hard, and prepares a picture. She draws a picture, gives a little more context. She teaches in Japan, so sometimes one word translation in Japanese, a brief thing takes a few seconds, etc. That's the entire method. It's called story listening. She finds stories. She uses older students. She uses Grimm's fairy tales, stories that have stood the test of time, that nearly everyone thinks are interesting, and other fairy tales. Now, when she tells the story, she helps with certain vocabulary, but she doesn't expect people to remember the vocabulary. She discourages them, don't write this down, don't study this. Let's listen to more stories. Our research has shown that you get more vocabulary from listening to more stories than doing exercises, flashcards, reviewing, etc. It's more efficient. You get faster vocabulary acquisition. Well, people get worried about this. How do we make sure that they learn all the frequent vocabulary? Frequent vocabulary is frequent. Okay. It comes back all the time. You can't help it. If you keep telling stories, you'll get all the frequent words. The second stage guided self-selected reading. After hearing hundreds of stories, they start reading, and they start reading easy graded readers. The teacher helps the child, helps the student select the readers that are right for them. Self-selection is the key. I'm going to talk a lot more about this later on. Self-selection is the magic, the secret. And eventually our goal, they'll start reading authentic reading. When our students can read real books written by native speakers, written for native speakers, our job is done. That's the goal. I don't have to take a class in German because I can read authentic German. I don't need a class in French. Very soon, I won't need a class in Spanish. Okay, I'll have to find another language to do this with. That's the goal. So we do stories called story listening, and then guided self-selected reading for quite a while. The whole thing takes a couple of years, 2-3 years. The students read hundreds of books. Okay, you're going to be jealous when I tell you this. Benico Mason had for her students a library of 5,000 graded readers in English. Yes, 5,000. That's where our money should go. Not on fancy technology that doesn't do anybody any good except the technology companies, okay? This is what our students need. You want to do it on PDF download, fine with me. Well, now I want to review why people think reading's a bad idea, this kind of reading, what the criticisms have been, and then of course I'll answer them. People are worried the language of fiction is not serious. It's not academic, not the language that they need in school and in work. Fiction won't give you knowledge. Nonfiction will give you knowledge, textbooks, etc. Nonfiction does not develop what we call habits of thought. About 120 years ago, there was a big campaign among the librarians. People wrote articles, the evils of fiction in the schools, okay? Children should not be reading anything they like. Here's a quote I put on the handout. A public library should not provide people with flabby mental nutriment. The public reads too many books, not too few. Fiction is not serious, it's bad for the mind. I think we have not recovered from this, which is why I'm bringing this up. This is still a problem. Now also, if you let students select their own books, they'll only choose easy books. Students are lazy. No. We'll come back to all 4 of these. Okay, let's first talk about, do you get new language when you read fiction, self-selected fiction? Not only do you get lots of language, you get all kinds of language, but you get academic language too. In fact, I'm about to claim fiction is a better way of getting academic language for school. Wow. The research is just beginning to come in. I have been very impressed with it. Okay, the study I did with Dr. Mason, we looked at her students. So her students who had been in her guided self-selected reading program, anywhere from 2 semesters to a couple of years, ages 18 to 78. She gave a course at the university for anyone. The homework was reading, and in classes they heard stories. Very nice. Every so often, she gave them a test, voluntary, the TOEIC test. You've heard of this. This is a very famous test. TOEIC is all over Asia. Oh my, I call it TOEIC fever. You need a certain TOEIC score to get jobs. If you get a high score on the TOEIC, you're excused from your English requirement, etc. So we asked students to take the TOEIC listening and reading tests. We paid for it, voluntary basis. And we had a list of what books they read. We just asked them to jot down the books. Here's what we found. This is the most spectacular study I know of our research. The more books you read, the higher your TOEIC score. Now, for both of you who remember your statistics class, not your fault, okay? The correlation was 0.94. That is like perfect. You don't see results. We also found, we did little what we call regression analyses. If you did extra study of vocabulary, that didn't help. If you did TOEIC preparation classes, that didn't help. Only the reading counted. An amazing, amazing results. So it gives you the vocabulary that you get on TOEIC and your reading ability, your writing style, all these things that listening ability, all these things that TOEIC tests. Okay, what about academic vocabulary? Interesting studies by Jeff McQuillan. Oh, Jeff McQuillan, I highly recommend his website. It's called, in his blog, the same name, it's called Backseat Linguist. What Dr. McQuillan does for his spare time, he reads the research and then he summarizes it for us in very digestible form and tells you where to find it, where to find his summaries, etc. I think he's the most dangerous person in the field because he takes all this complicated, impressive research and makes it clear and simple, and he knows which research is important. I have to say, Jeff McQuillan was my student a long time ago. Our relationship is kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. Remember this scene when Obi-Wan says, I was the master, no, Darth Vader says, I was the master and you were the student, now you are the master and I am the student. That's how I feel about Jeff. I learned so much from his stuff. 2 studies. Jeff analyzed, Dr. McQuillan analyzed all the vocabulary in the 7 Harry Potter novels. Those novels contain half of the words that are on lists of academic vocabulary that students are supposed to know. It's a list of like 485 words. I'll give you an example of what some of them are. I have the whole list right here. Okay, the easiest ones that come up, analysis, distribution. The rarest ones, collapse, colleagues, intrinsic, those kinds of words. They come up in Harry Potter. Half of them come up and come up 10 times or more, which means you have enough for language acquisition. This is magic. So someone who reads the Harry Potter novels will pick up several hundred words just by reading these novels. Another study that, again, Dr. McQuillan did, he looked at 22 novels for young people. You know what they are. Nancy Drew, Twilight. You read Twilight? I couldn't get into Twilight. I read number 1. I tried, and I said, no, this is enough. And my daughter said, try number 2, it gets better. But I usually take her suggestions, but I couldn't go. Anyway, people tell me it's very good. Well, those novels contain lots of books. 85% of the academic words and 44% appear 12 times or more. So this is wonderful. So so-called light reading, fiction contains language. It contains vocabulary. It contains grammar. It helps you with your writing style over and over again. We have seen this, and it applies to academic reading. I hope Donald Trump is listening, because he's a terrible speller and he never reads. And I attacked him in a letter to the editor of the Washington Post. I'll send that to Jose. You can look at it. Okay. Well, what about nonfiction versus fiction? Well, fiction turns out to be a better predictor of vocabulary than nonfiction. Let me repeat that because that's so astonishing. The studies show fiction is better for you for vocabulary than nonfiction. A study done at the, now this is first language study, a study done at the University of London. These researchers have been looking at the same small children till they grew up, since they were 2-3 years old till today, where they're now 42 years old at the last time. They test them every 2 or 3 years on different tests. The last time they tested them on vocabulary. These are adults, English as a first language, living in London. They gave them a vocabulary test. The best predictor, reading. Wow. The best kind of reading, genre, fiction. Middlebrow and highbrow fiction. Lowbrow didn't turn out so well, not so bad. But highbrow and middlebrow fiction, which is what we generally mean. You see this again and again. And this their vocabularies when they were adults, when they were 42 years old, it didn't matter how much vocabulary you had when you were younger. It didn't matter how you did on tests before. It matters how much you're reading when you're 42 years old. When I get to be 42, I'm going to start reading. Okay, how about that? Now, other studies, same thing. Jerram and Moss, British Educational Journal, 35 countries, 15-year-olds. Fiction was the best performer of reading comprehension on international tests. Okay, the next one. Is it the kind of knowledge? What knowledge do you get from fiction? Studies at the University of Michigan, a guy named Keith Stanovich has done a number of these. People who read more know more. And it's fiction what they read. If you look at books taken out of libraries, 9 out of 10, fiction. Bestsellers, nearly all are fiction. That's what people read. People who read more fiction, they know more about school subjects. They know more about history. They know more about literature. They know more about science just by reading. I got to tell you about my conversations with my cousin Evelyn. If you ever run into Evelyn, you'll have something to talk about. Evelyn is the older cousin in my family. She's like 93 years old now. And when I was a little boy, oh gosh, Evelyn and her husband, Marty, they used to live close by and I used to visit them all the time. I play the piano, she plays the violin, and she was so nice. She was best friends with my mother, an aunt-niece close relationship. So Evelyn and I have been talking all these years. Now it's on telephone and on the computer. And Evelyn says, you know, my husband, Marty, passed away. He went to law school, but he never practiced, but he still knows a lot about law. I want to find out about law. That's very important in today's world. I'm going to take a class. I said, Evelyn, don't do that. I have a suggestion. Read books by John Grisham. Read legal novels. Read The Runaway Jury. Read The Firm. She's been doing this for the last year. She agrees with me. 10 John Grisham novels is like a year of law school. You know so much. I read The Runaway Jury long after I was on a jury. I was the foreman of the jury because college professor, they made me foreman. And I did a terrible job. If I had read The Runaway Jury, I feel bad about this. I would have been a much better foreman. She's right. I'm right. These novels really, really do it. It's reading. That's where you get it. So you'll know more about everything. What about the next one? Readers developed superior habits of mind. Habits of mind in this case is two things. Number one, empathy. Readers understand other people more. I read this in an article in Scientific American and I started reading the papers about it. Yes, readers know more because they've had more experiences. They have met more people. Terry Gross, a radio personality, said this on the radio. When you read, you're learning to be someone else. You're learning to see the world through their eyes. You get another point of view. Absolutely right. And you meet interesting people, otherwise you would never meet. Last year, I listened to Murder on the Orient Express, Agatha Christie. You meet so many interesting people and you learn a lot about them. This is marvelous. Also, you develop what they call a tolerance for vagueness. You realize the world is complicated. Simple solutions don't work. Donald Trump, let's build a wall. Let's raise the tariff on goods from Mexico, from China. Terrible ideas. None of them work. They were simple because he's not a reader. He hasn't seen the world. Let me tell you what other people say about this. Here's a quote from Barack Obama. What a contrast. Donald Trump, Barack Obama. Oh my gosh, couldn't be any more spectacular. Anyway, The Guardian, a British newspaper, did an article, interviews. They interviewed President Obama about his reading. What books do you read? What do you get out of it? Here's what Obama said. When I think about how I understand my role as citizen, the most important stuff I've learned comes from novels. It has to do with empathy. Now, Barack Obama didn't read this research. It has to do with being comfortable with the notion the world is complicated, there it is, and full of grays, but there's still truth to be found. And it's possible to connect with someone else, even though they're very different from you. My personal hero, Noam Chomsky, one of his books, he says, it's quite possible, overwhelmingly probable, that we'll always learn more about human life and personalities from novels, from scientific psychology. Absolutely. Okay, the fear, the fourth one, they'll just stick with easy books. Kids are lazy. It's always kids these days, right? No, I've looked at the studies on books that kids select, whether they're at the reading level above. They read at their level, but mostly above. Here's a study. They all agree with this. These are first language studies back in 2007. Oh no, we quoted this, the study itself, 1981, Southgate. When children select their own books, they are at or above their reading level. They rarely choose simple books. They choose books for interest, not because they're easy or hard, okay? Scholastic did a big survey of this, the company. Only 7% picked books below their reading level. They're either mixed or above. Lebrant, 1958, great study. As children mature, they select more complicated books and a wider variety of genres. We replicated this study in Mandarin. We did a project in Hefei in China. We looked at records of what children took out from the school library over a 3-year time. We had the books rated by the faculty as for complexity, the quality of the plot. They got better. Every child, just about every child got better. Over 3 years, you see a dramatic improvement. Children do not stick with easy books. Now, this is only first language. So I hope some eager scholar out there will replicate this for second language. I want to kind of close this, not quite finished, by talking about self-selection, a related but good topic. I have looked at the research on self-selection. It's a little bit mixed. Are students better off with assigned reading or better off with choosing their own reading? And it's very obvious to me now why it's not so clear. Depends on what's available. In some of the studies, the assigned reading is great. The teachers and school librarians understand the children, which is nearly always the case. Talk to the teacher who knows literature, knows their kids, librarian will tell you what they're reading, etc. And if there's nothing to select, if the library is poor, assigned is going to be better. Okay, but there's been some studies where both of them were good. Of course, it was my student, Cian Lee, who's still a very valuable colleague. She did a really nice study, I have it listed here, where the selection was very good and self-selection was involved. Study took place a fair amount of time. Here's what she found. Self-selection, the kids who self-selected were better on every kind of vocabulary test, except the test of academic vocabulary where the groups were the same. So in this case, it was just as good. And the assigned books were good, okay? On a closed test, overall test of language, the self-selected kids do better. Better than this, though, are reactions about getting books as gifts. When you get a book as a gift, it's assigned reading. This is one of my favorite quotes, Garrison Keillor. As a former English major, I'm a sitting duck for gift books. People always give me gifts. And in the past, and it's always classics. In the past few years, I've gotten Dickens, Thackeray, Smollett, Richardson, Emerson, Keats, Boswell, and the Brontes. All of them great. None of them ever read by me. All of them now on my shelf, looking at me and making me feel guilty. I have the same shelf of gift books. I'm terrorized by one of my friends saying, "How did you like that book I gave you, Steve?" I said, well, so I don't want gift books. I try to say no, thank you. The ones on my shelf, I've kind of covered up. It says to Steve, my friend, I give it away to a library, okay? I try to, and I hope they don't ask me. I have some exceptions. Nonfiction, that's an exception. My colleague Nushan Ashtari gave me a really good book on creativity. It's one of the best I've ever read. Fabulous. That counts. And there's one person, no matter what book he recommends, I immediately read it. Everyone has someone like that in your life. He knows me better than I know myself. This is my son. And he's been recommending books, and I always read them, and it's always, he knows me, and it's always just exactly right. But otherwise, I'm afraid gift books are a test. It's assigned reading, and that tells us our distaste. I want to tell you my experiences in school because they're the same as yours. When I was in secondary school, that was in the United States, we all took English literature and American literature, fourth year and third year, always that. And we were assigned books. I read all the books. I took tests on them. I passed the test, just okay. I don't remember any of them. I don't remember the authors. I don't remember the titles. I don't remember the stories. Nothing. They're all gone, erased from my memory. But after school, when I was in high school, I went home and I read what I wanted to read. I read science fiction. Oh my, I love science fiction. I read Arthur C. Clarke. I read Robert Heinlein. I read Ray Bradbury. They were wonderful. And I read baseball stories. I'm going to tell you about some of these. The science fiction, they were superb. I remember all of them. I pick one up occasionally and I remember what happened, what's going on, and I remember the messages I learned from these books. The baseball stories were spectacular. There's an author who wrote in the 1940s. His name is John R. Tunis, Tunis. And he invented the baseball team, the Brooklyn Dodgers. You'll understand enough, if you speak just a little baseball, you'll understand this. It was about this team. His first one was called The Kid from Tompkinsville, a young man, 19 years old, very young, who joins the Brooklyn Dodgers. They recruit him to come. Only 19. He comes to Dodgers camp, joins the team, and he pitches, and he is unbeatable as the pitcher. He's the best pitcher they ever saw. Pitcher's the one who throws the ball to the batter misses, okay, or hits it. After 17 wins, fame, he slips in the shower and bumps his elbow. His elbow is seriously damaged. He goes to doctor after doctor. They say, you will never pitch again. You can throw, but you can't do the fancy pitches. That's going to hurt your elbow. He stays home that summer, practices hitting. He's already a very good hitter. And he comes back as a regular player, not a pitcher, playing the outfield. 3 years later, he's the best hitter in the league. He wins the prize as best hitter. Now, one of the critics of these books talks about The Kid from Tompkinsville, and he says, it is the boy's book of Job. It's about problems, overcoming. Later books, the same guy, Roy Tucker, is in the Army, prisoner of war camp, World War II, escapes, comes back, joins the Dodgers, have trouble, has problems, overcomes them, more problems, overcomes them. I learned a lot from these books. They're wonderful. These are all literature. In fact, the John R. Tunis books are so good. I had this doctor, I went to this medical group, still a member, and my doctor there was Dr. Pearl. I always called him Dr. Pearl, and I was Mr. Krashen, or Dr. Krashen, whatever. And we realized we had this common interest in old baseball teams, okay? I don't care anymore, but it's then, and he knew those books too. When he retired from Kaiser, I ran into him. He said, let's get together and have coffee. He says, you're the only patient I want to see again. And he's now Seymour, and I'm now Steve. I still talk to Seymour all the time, okay? We started meeting at Starbucks, of course. We reread all the John R. Tunis books and discussed them. We had our literary sessions. That's how good these books are. You find what's right for you and you read narrowly. These books were my language arts curriculum. They made me literate. They gave me knowledge. If you read 1,000,000 words of science fiction, this is another study, you get most of the vocabulary used in all of science. Wow. Now in other languages, I still read science fiction. I read it in French, read it in German. So, and this is what keeps me going. I've started to read it in Spanish. It's been a little tough, but don't worry, I'll get there. I want to have a postscript on this, one more topic. I want to talk about my special interest, which has always been, and that's comic books, and why this is interesting to you, why comic books can be so helpful. Let me brag for you in case you didn't hear enough good things about me. I'll tell you more. I am the world's #1 expert on comic book research. It's true. The reason is I am the only researcher who looks at comic books and the only one. That's why I'm #1, okay? I worked on this with a elementary school teacher who authored some paper. I hope she and I start working on it again. It was wonderful. Here's what we found about comic books. Oh, I'll give you my story with comics. All this is first language research, but I think it's going to be hot for us. We can make the world a better place. And we're starting on this very soon. When I was in the 2nd grade, I was not in the top reading group. I was not a dedicated reader yet. My father thought, no, this isn't right. He brought home comic books. He said, Stephen, read all the comic books you want, buy them, I will pay for them. I became a comic book reader then, fanatic. In the 1980s, I wandered into my son's bedroom. My son is now all grown up. He's approaching 50. And I found Spider-Man. And I had insomnia. It was late in that. And I started reading Spider-Man straight through. I looked at his collection. Amazing. They're so good. When my dad brought home comics, I went to the higher reading group in a very short time. The dad was right. It really worked. Here's what the research says. Study we did, this is typical. 7th graders who read more comic books report more book reading and more pleasure reading. And it's true of middle-class kids and children of poverty, both. Wow, this is really good. We need to look at this in our kids. Comics encourage more reading. One of the questions you're going to ask me is this: my kids just don't like to read. No, they don't. They'd rather play with their little devices and all this. I give them a book and they get bored. What should I do? Well, stop giving them nonfiction. Stop assigning reading. And here's what a study that I learned a lot from. It was published in the School Library Journal. It's called Spider-Man in the Library. They brought comic books and graphic novels into the library in a junior high school. They did not allow them to circulate. You had to go to the library to read the comic books and the graphic novels. They looked at library traffic and circulation before and after. So you see, library use, just going to the library, went up 82%. Non-comic book materials taken out 30%, just because they were there. That will bring kids into the library, and then they find other things. It's a conduit. Now, comic books as literature. This is the most exciting part of the talk today. As I mentioned with graded readers, it's true of comic books too. Comic books had a major revolution in 1941. It was 1961, the establishment of the Marvel Comic Book Company. The president of the company, Stan Lee, L-E-E, okay? Stan Lee developed superheroes with problems, real problems. Let me tell you how I met Stan Lee, okay? Yeah, I get along. I know so many famous people. All right. This is so cool. Okay. Stanley invited me to lunch. Can you imagine that? Wow. I've now met Stanley and Noam Chomsky. What more is there in the world? This is great. Okay. So, and I tell everybody I met Stanley, Noam Chomsky. I have to introduce them. Anyway, Stanley passed away though. I was at USC at my university. I was attending a lecture on relative clauses. It's okay. And I found out that the comic book club had invited Stan Lee. And he was talking to them right down the hall. So I left the lecture, said, I gotta go, something happened. And there's Stan Lee answering questions. Absolutely brilliant. You've seen Stan Lee in the Marvel movies where he has a small cameo, he's the butler, that's how he is. He's a really nice guy. He was giving these lectures. After a while, I raised my hand. I can't help it. And I said, when is Peter Parker going to graduate school? Peter Parker is this scientific genius. He invented web shooters and all that. And he said to me, that's a very good question. Talk to me afterwards. I want to talk to you. He could tell I was older. The kids in the audience were all my people. They were all the nerds, right? Then here I was, obviously the professor. So I talked to him. He says, I want to talk to you. Let's have lunch. So we had lunch. We went to the San Fernando Valley, and there he was. Stanley bought me lunch. Gosh, you know what we talked about? We did not talk about money, making deals, never. We talked about comic books. He loved my idea of Spider-Man, of Peter Parker going back to graduate school. I was in the Sunday Los Angeles Times colored section of Peter Parker trying to find out about graduate school. The professor he talked to looked like me. This was my moment of fame. It was amazing. So anyway, and he wrote me a thank you note, gave my son a free, book, drawing comics the Marvel way. I got paid very well for that. It was wonderful. Couldn't be better. He wanted to talk about himself a little bit. I asked him, he said, you know what my favorite character is? The Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer has the most problems of anyone in the Marvel universe. The Silver Surfer, every time he does something, he has to weigh saving a group of people and allowing a planet to be destroyed. The bad guys are playing games with him. Yeah, I'll let you save the burning building, but we're going to destroy this planet. Can you imagine the torture going on? So we got along very, very well. I want to tell you about one Spider-Man comic, which I think tells the whole story very well. It's Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. I have it on the handout, 1985. As you see there, issue 102, whatever. This, toward the end of the comic, Spider-Man discovers or meets a young lady who's a serious problem. She needs a new kidney. She needs a transplant. And the problem is the best way to have that is to find a close relative who has the same genetic structure. So Spider-Man does the investigation and finds she has a twin brother. Not bad. Fraternal, of course, not identical, but that's pretty good. He finds the young man, his name is Donnie. He finds where Donnie's working or where he lives, the apartment. He's not at home. There's someone on the roof. Spider-Man goes up, sees Donnie. Donnie's on the ledge, about to jump. This is a comic book for children, okay? And it works. And Spider-Man says, Donnie, don't jump. Donnie looks back, sees Spider-Man. Spider-Man's too far away. He can't use the web shooter to bring him down. He's got to talk him down. Donnie says, I'm going to jump, and you're not going to stop me. I've got problems. I've got problems I just can't face. Besides, he says, what do you know about problems? You're a superhero. You don't have problems. Spider-Man thinks of his problems. He's broken up with his girlfriend 20 times, back and forth. He thinks of his dead uncle. He blames himself for his father's death. It wasn't his fault, but still, I could have done something. He didn't, how this is. His work problems. Peter Parker has a job It's very good premonition of what's happening today. Is a job where he's paid by the piecework, not a salary. Okay, which is what you see now everywhere, which is horrible. He's a photographer. He gets paid by the picture, and the editor hates Spider-Man. They run articles. So he thinks of all his problems. And he says to Donnie, words that will live forever in comic book literature. He says, Donnie, you think life is easy behind this mask? You think because I wear this mask, I don't know what it's like to have problems? He says, Donnie, life is problems. That's what it is for all of us. And every moment, every day is problems. And we grow by facing our problems, not running away. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that's what he said. Besides, he says, if you jump, you're killing your sister as well. Donnie comes down off the ledge. She says, okay, my sister. They go to the hospital. The surgery is a success. The transplant works. Donnie's doing fine. His sister's doing fine. Peter Parker visits the brother and sister, leaves the hospital, and he's thinking, well, this one turned out okay. But Donnie's still depressed. And there's not much I can do about that. You can't solve everybody's problems. I think of this instance a lot. It has been a great help to me. This works. This is what we're seeing now. I must say, I still think some comics and graphic novels are not very good. They sometimes have too much violence, unnecessary violence, too much cleavage, okay, too much, sexual stuff in them. But that's not the fault of comic books. That's the writers, et cetera. It's like saying all movies are bad, okay? So I still have my criticisms, but it's wonderful. Your kids are reluctant readers, comic books. What we're looking for is like graded comic books that are just simplified a little bit, that are easy, that kids can read, et cetera, and gradually get better, eventually become real comic book readers. We can rest assured that for the most part, they're reading pretty good literature. Okay, that is my sermon for today. I will do now a discussion. The way it works is you ask questions and I answer them, right? But if you don't ask the right questions, I will manipulate and change the question and change it into something I want to talk about. How do you like that?
Okay, so first of all, thank you. I don't know how to clap to make you hear our clapping, because it has been a very, very inspiring lecture, and above all, and we have enjoyed it, which is so the message of your stories. I think they've come through. We caught the main idea, so we have it. So thank you very much. There are several, so please, for people, if there are some participants raising their hands, please don't raise your hands because we cannot give you a yes, right? But please write your questions in the chat. Annalie, who is there, will help me, or write them on the button that is yes, there, that is about questions and answers, preguntas y respuestas. You can write it there, and we have already a question there. There is one question.
Let me go to one that I like. I'm going to ignore you, okay? I'm going to go to
Can
one that is so exciting. I want to answer this first. What about heritage language?
Wow.
That is a very good one. What about, this is from Esperanza Roma Mendoza, thank you. What about heritage language speakers who are readers in their dominant but don't read guided level reading in their heritage language? We are studying this now. This is a major research. We did a panel on it at the bilingual meeting. My colleague and I, Nushan Ashtari, organized it, and we found some good news and bad news, but we can take care of the bad news. The good news is, if we do succeed in getting heritage language speakers to read in the heritage language, all problems are solved. In most cases, for Spanish in the United States, for example, the heritage language is usually lost right away. Children come to elementary school, they're fine. They can talk to mom and dad and their abuelos and all that, and grandparents. But by the time they get to secondary school, English dominates. And they can't talk to their grandparents anymore. Now, what about reading? We have a couple of great case histories. Lucy Say gave us one. Grace Cho gave us one, and they're published, et cetera, and we have written them up in their studies. We found a couple of heritage language speakers who have been reading, who got into books, started reading, and they speak the heritage language very well. I'll tell you about Grace's story. Korean American, okay? She's trilingual with Spanish too. She's really something. And she's been a bilingual teacher, et cetera. She was at a party with people from the Korean American community. And she met a group of young people there who spoke Korean American, who spoke Korean very well. And they all come to the United States very young. Some were born here and they still spoke Korean very well. We know where they didn't get it. They didn't get it from heritage language classes, which are usually horrible. Dr. Ashtari has looked at these, other people have, and they're terrible. They turn you away. They're classic traditional methodology. They have not read my papers. What can I tell you? Okay, we'll talk about that later. I know why. Not their fault. These young people, though, she asked them, how did you get so good? Reading. They read novels, they read books, impressive classics. That's how they got good. And they give reading the credit. The problem, now where did you get your books? He asked them. Yeah. This is the problem. They found ways, mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy had books. Mommy and daddy got books from friends. They went to the Spanish-speaking neighbor or the Korean neighborhoods. They got books from the local stores. They managed to get them occasionally from libraries, but not very many. But that's the problem. And this is my colleague Ashtari's main research effort. She has been working with Farsi, Persian. In the area, lots of families from Iran live in the Westwood and Beverly Hills area. And Farsi is leaving, no question. The kids don't speak it very well. And she has done very interesting research. For a while, there were Farsi bookstores. Aren't anymore, but they were there. She interviewed the owners. She looked at what's there. Classics and textbooks, that's all. Nothing interesting for young people. She went, right, same thing, I know. She went to the local library. She took books off the shelf, all right? And she did something very clever that Jeff McQuillan had done. It was called a unobtrusive research called wear and tear. You take the book off the shelf, you open it up, and you see where the pages have been bent, where they're a little bit dirty, and you see how far people have read. The books in Farsi, the only ones that were there were Teach Yourself Farsi, no interesting stories. The average person read about 5 pages. So this is the problem. Esperanza knows the problem. You know the problem. The problem is very clear. There is nothing to read. We need to find interesting, easy books for lower classes, lower levels. We should write some of them, get graded readers. For English, they're easy to find. For other languages, a little more challenging. And I hope we can solve that problem ourselves. Okay, great question.
Thank you very much. There's another one that is about from Mireille Besson, and she asks about if there are studies of how much time per day or per week they should be reading for best on average for language acquisition.
Wow. Well, that is one of the most frequent questions. And I can give you a vague answer because I want to say how much time if you do it right. How much time under optimal conditions. Okay. If you take like Dr. Mason's program, how much time? It'll take a few years, 3-4 years, until you're reading authentic work and you're beginning to sound, respectable, etc. That's pretty good. Here's the easy answer though. If they have the right books and they fall in love with reading, you won't even notice the time. They'll be there before you know it. We should not be in a hurry. The foreign language associations come out with all these lists, how long it takes to master a language. And for so-called easy languages, that's Spanish, right? It's supposed to be an easy language. well, I don't know. Yeah,
Depends.
it takes so many years. For French, it takes so many years. German, a little harder. For Arabic, all these. That's for formal instruction.
Yeah.
We throw that out the window. If you do it right, you get to read. No, you won't even ask the question. It's going to come rapidly. Great. Next question.
So next question, Dr. Grace Beuze. Good evening, Dr. Krashen from Belgium. Here are the votes from Belgium, 10 from 10. My question, if I recall well, the comprehension hypothesis does not forbid the use of the first language in the second language classroom. It will help if it results in comprehensible input, but it will hurt when it results in less comprehensible input. When talking about the graded readers, what guidelines should the editors manage in order to help and not hurt? Thanks, Chris.
Okay, this is the foundation of bilingual education. Yeah, first language helps because it builds comprehensible input, gives you more knowledge, and the world is much more understandable, and you get a reading habit. It's true in programs where students come to the United States, or say from Mexico. We give them bilingual education. We give them lots of work in the primary language, and that makes English more comprehensible. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And then we continue with heritage language development. Thanks for asking that. That's a crucial thing. I'm going to add one. Yeah, go ahead. Next question.
Annalie, can you read the ones that are in the chat?
Well, I have to scroll, so I'd have to find it.
Annalie, we can't hear you.
Yeah, the one in the chat is about heritage language. So that was the question.
We just did that.
Yeah. But I think there is a very interesting comment from my point of view when Esperanza writes about her son. And she said that he was able to maintain his Spanish thanks to all the books and comics we read together. And that takes me to shared reading.
Wonderful. Tell everybody about it. Okay? Don't just tell us. Write it somewhere. Make a comment. This is wonderful. We need more cases like this. Encouragement. Let me tell you about one more study and then what our biggest problem is, and why there has been failure and what we can do about it. My colleague, who I'm happy to say is in the audience today, former student Victoria Rodrigo, who's now professor at Georgia State, did, I think, one of the most interesting studies in the field. I just rediscovered it about 2 weeks ago, and I posted it on Twitter. And I've sent a summary to Jose so you can share it. Get this. Those who speak English as a second language, who are readers, have larger vocabularies than first language speakers of English who are not readers. Let me repeat that. That is astonishing. Second language people who like to read in Spanish, they study literature and all that, you compare them to native speakers of Spanish who don't read much. Native speakers of English, I'm sorry, who don't read much. The second language people know more vocabulary. Reading as a second language learner, you'll beat first language learners who don't read much. Right. This is the lever. This is the power that works. Okay, so I'm sure.
So there are not other questions, but I've got one, because when you were talking about the Marvel company and the Marvel comics, I was thinking about the Marvel series, the Marvel movies.
Yep.
To what extent, yeah. Because our youngster, what they do is they watch movies on Netflix, on Prime,
right.
on. So
if they're going to watch the Marvel movies, I like the Marvel movies. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen most of them. I think they're excellent. I think they're good literature for the most part. Robert Downey Jr., unbelievable. Oh my gosh. So I've seen them all, etc., or most of them. If you want to have help with comprehension, read the book first.
Read the book first. Yeah.
We should read the comic book first. Kyung-Suk Cho, my student, read a book. Yeah, my student, Kyung Suk Cho, former student, now professor in Korea, doing very well. She wrote an article called Read the Book, See the Movie.
Good.
I would add, read the comic, see the movie, and it is fabulous. Oh, movies are fabulous, I think, but they're hard. Movies are hard. Movies are the last frontier, I think, for second language acquisition.
Yeah.
I have trouble in French movies, believe me. It's a little too fast here and there. I have no trouble reading, etc. Okay, next question.
So I think we have no other questions. No one
Oh,
else.
good. I want to make another statement. You're not going
Okay.
anywhere, right? Okay, I'll make you miss your next appointments. I know your students are waiting in class. What has been preventing all this from happening? I've been working on this for 45 years.
Yeah.
This hasn't happened yet. Why not? There's good reason. First of all, if you're a teacher and you want to find out about comprehensible input and reading, how do you find out? It's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible because the work, the written papers, are in academic journals and in academic books, in university libraries, okay?
Sure.
How can you get there? If you can find them, try to read them. They're impossible. They're too long. They're too complicated. Someone once said centuries ago, if you ask someone the time, you don't want the person to give you a history of the wristwatch. And that's what academics do. The articles are too long. They're too complicated.
Yeah.
They're written by academics who have no idea. Someone speculated that's how you avoid criticism. Write long, complicated articles. No one's going to read it. You can say whatever you like, and you can have a clear conscience. You feel good. Okay.
But this is something we cannot recommend. Our youngsters, our young academics, they have to write them because they are.
We're going to change. I have an idea of how to change this. Okay.
Yeah. But then they have to do the transfer to the society. And I think that is the next step. Once you write your academic paper, then be sure that the society can understand what you're talking about and what you are proposing.
No, make sure the society doesn't understand. Then you'll get respect. If they understand, they'll just think you're a very light person. Okay. So it's really usually what happens. My experience is like yours. I went to a meeting of the Acoustical Society of America. One of the speeches was given by one of my professors. I was a student, Peter Ladefoged, a brilliant professor of phonetics. He gave a talk and he said to the group, he said, well, I'm supposed to talk for 12 minutes, but we've decided to limit the talks to 5 minutes. I'm going to do it in 5 minutes.
Okay.
He threw out his notes. He gave this very simple talk. He said, this is how it is. This is the form transition, blah, blah, blah. Everybody understood it.
Fine.
He got more criticism than anyone else at the meeting because they understood it.
But people learned. It's the same with the Augen und die Nase and what you in your first story.
Exactly.
But people learned, and progress depends on understanding.
So I think here's what I'm doing about this, and other people are also doing this. Oh, also the books and articles are too expensive. We can't afford them.
Yeah, that's
the average books now run in American dollars, $150 for a book. Forget it. Nobody can come close to that. You have to be a professor at a university library that has a first-class collection and be able to take things out for free, or you can't keep up. That's horrible.
Right.
And the journals, I cannot afford to go anymore. If you find a journal, there's an article by me written in 1971, and you want a copy, you pay 40 American dollars.
Yeah,
the journal gets the money, not the author.
Yeah, sure.
So here's the revolution. We now are 100% open access. This is young professors, I'm talking to you. Older professors, I'm really talking to you. Everything I write for the last 5 years is open access. I publish in journals that are free to readers, free to writers, free download. Don't ask permission, just do it. All my articles now are, I hope, I'm trying to put them on my website, sdkrashen.com. I'm now putting them on ResearchGate, little by little, .net. Jeff McQuillan now has a nice clean list of his articles. I'm starting to do that. Scholars, do this. The more senior scholars do this,
We do
the more
it.
it will become acceptable. Also, my articles are short. 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. I got this idea from reading an article. I downloaded it on the double helix, DNA, RNA, etc. It was like 4 pages. And if you remember half of high school biology, you can understand it. It was written by the discoverers, Crick and Watson, and it was published in Nature, the #1 journal.
Sure.
This is the goal. Short, comprehensible articles that people can understand. Don't be afraid. You don't have to tell people everything you know in your article. That's why you can write, they can read it somewhere else. You don't have to write an introduction that brags about how much you read. You don't need a sermon at the end, how you should do your next experiment. Keep it short. Tell them what happened, the essential data. Keep it short and cheap. And that's what I think the answer is. That's my advice. And I'm always trying to do a better job. Oh, by the way, I'm going to ask a favor. If you can, please follow me on Twitter.
I'm doing it. I'm already following you.
Okay, 1 down, 2,000 to go. My name on Twitter is Krashen, and that's occasional jokes, but that's where Victoria Rodrigo's article is. That's where other people's articles are. Anytime I see something good, me, someone else, etc., I put it on Twitter. This is our way of cheap, easy communication. So, okay, very good, folks. We did it.
So thank you very much. People are saying bravo. People are saying great talk as always. Thanks, still. So, but there's just a question. I don't know. So from
Elena. It's just out of curiosity. She says, "What's your opinion about authors like Alan Moore or Robert Crumb? Did you happen to meet them?"
No, I haven't met them. I've only met Stan Lee and Noam Chomsky. I haven't met too many others. I've heard the others speak, at conferences. The children's authors are all absolutely wonderful, but I've met authors of linguistics books too, but I haven't gotten around much. Okay.
Fernando writes great stories, and I think that
I know that. That's true.
That really links in the beginning, exactly.
I love recommendations. Thank you. That's really good.
Oh, and they also suggest a language. If you want to learn a new language, the suggestion is Dutch.
Really? There's good stuff in Dutch?
Yeah.
A lot of
the
humor.
Languages I find are the best.
A lot of humor is there.
Well, I'll tell you what I like best. My favorite languages are Catalan, and Mandarin.
Mandarin.
Yes, the reason is I don't speak Catalan. I know a little Mandarin. The reason is it's easy to say good morning in those languages. So if you're a night person and you wake up and you are totally asleep, in Catalan, all you need to say is bon dia. You don't have to say buenos dias. And in Mandarin, it's tsai. I love it. Now, my advice to you now, the most important sentence to learn in any language, first, mi amigo va pagar. Mon ami va payer. My friend wird bezahlen. My friend will pay. That's the most important.
You can understand Dutch pretty well. Here, Chris is writing about lekkere coffee. I don't know how to pronounce it, Chris, so sorry. But I understand it when you say lekker.
Very good.
Yeah, that's a very good one.
And in terms of my fee, I'm going to raise my fee. Here's the new fee. If we meet face to face, any of you, you owe me 1 coffee.
Good. We will try to do it.
There we go.
We will try to do it. We will try to do it in the very next future. I hope.
I hope so too.
So I hope so that when everything will be over. So I think we are running out of time. We said 1 hour and a half, and we've done it pretty well. So thank you. People are saying thank you very much for everything. And in fact, it has been so inspiring, and we enjoyed you so much. I should have met you before, Krashen. I should have dreamt of you before I ever thought it wouldn't be possible. And it has been possible. So thank you very much. I think it has been. People are saying it. They're saying it has been a pleasure, fascinating. So we really loved your speech. Thank you.
For sure, Augusta Mio, my pleasure, everybody.
Thank you for sharing with us. And in the future, I will go for that coffee with you, and I will try to make it very good.
First cup on you. After that,
Good.
we'll talk about it. Okay.
Yes, we'll talk about
Okay.
that.
Very
So
good.
thank you very much, and
Bye.
I hope to see you again
Okay.
very soon.
It's time for another coffee. Okay.
Good. We
Okay,
stay for
okay.
another coffee. Bye
Thank you very much.
bye. Bye bye. Muchas gracias,
Goodbye.
profesor. Good.
Goodbye. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. A pleasure to have you here.